My dear brothers and sisters, we thank our God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the God who is love, for gathering us as a family of faith.
What if the next pope could make the Catholic Church do something different for good? There are more and more whispers around the world, and one name keeps coming up above the rest. Could this be the man picked to lead more than 1 billion followers into a new era? There has been talk, guessing, and even some mysterious words that could mean Cardinal Tagle will be the next pope. Let's find out more. The Vatican is going through a lot of change because people are learning about the papacy. The world waits with bated breath every time the Pope's seat opens to see who will be the next leader of the Catholic Church. One name keeps coming up in the holy halls of the Vatican: Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Rumors, customs, and divine intervention have all played a part in the process. Will this charismatic cardinal, who is liked all over the world, become the next pope? Some very close to the Vatican say that the choice has been made. But before we talk about why he is the best candidate, let's talk about what the Pope's job is. One of the most important and deepest jobs in the world is that of Pope. For more than 1.3 billion Catholics, he is more than just the boss of the Catholic Church. He is a symbol of togetherness, hope, and continuity around the world. With its roots in faith and history, the papacy is both a link to the past and a lighthouse for the future. The job of Pope goes back almost 2,000 years to St. Peter, who was one of Jesus Christ's 12 disciples. As the Catholic faith says, Jesus put Peter in charge of the early Christians and famously told him, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Peter was the first bishop of Rome, and the popes who came after him are seen as the spiritual heirs to this holy mission. Since the Church has a long history, the Pope has a special role. As the vicar of Christ, he is seen as Christ's representative on earth, and a very important spiritual person. The Pope is both a spiritual and a temporal leader. He has to deal with the complicated facts of modern life. The Pope is responsible for many important things, such as spiritual advice, diplomatic work, and setting an example for others. The Pope is the most important teacher of the Catholic faith. He sets the theological direction and pastoral goals for the whole Church. Through his homilies and apostolic letters, he makes faith and doctrine clear. Not only does what he taught affect the Church, but it also affects larger conversations about right and wrong. Outside of the Church, the Pope works to build bridges between countries and support peace and understanding through diplomacy. There are official political ties between the Vatican and more than 180 countries, giving the Pope a unique place to talk about world problems, settle disagreements, and speak up for those who aren't heard. Besides being a spiritual leader and a diplomat, the Pope often talks out about things like poverty, human rights, climate change, and human rights. His moral speech goes far beyond the Catholic Church and motivates people and leaders all over the world to work for the greater good. People believe that God calls people to be popes. For Catholics, the Holy Spirit guides the choice of the Pope, making sure that the head of the Church is in line with God's will. This spiritual aspect gives the job of Pope a sense of holiness and purpose that goes beyond the usual. But the challenges of today's world mean that the Pope has to find a balance between tradition and flexibility. The Pope's choices and actions are felt all over the world, whether they are about the digital age, interfaith dialogue, or social justice. However, even though the papal office is stable, it is not a fixed position. But the home of the Pope, called the Holy See, is empty when the Pope dies or steps down. In the past, most popes have been in office until they died. But in 2013, Pope Benedict XVI did something very unusual. He quit. He said it was because he was getting old and weak. His resignation was the first of its kind in modern times. It showed how human the Pope is and how much pressure it puts on people. When the seat opens up, everyone in the world gives their attention to the solemn and secret process of picking a new pope. This is a choice that has huge implications for both Catholics and people around the world. But before we talk about how the new pope is picked, let's talk more about Pope Francis, who is currently in charge of this city and the Catholic Church. Jorge Mario Bergoglio, who is better known as Pope Francis, has become one of the most important and inspiring people in our time. Elect as the 266th Pope of the Catholic Church in 2013, he made a lot of history. His election as Pope marked a big change for the Church. He was the first Jesuit Pope, the first Pope from the Americas, and the first Pope to name himself Francis in honor of St. Francis of Assisi. People around the world were immediately drawn to Pope Francis because of his kindness, humility, and vision for a church that stands with society's weakest people. Francis has done nothing less than revolutionize the way things are run. He has made it his goal to change the Catholic Church from a place of strict rules to a place where everyone is welcome. His style has been called a pastoral papacy because he doesn't focus on institutional power, but on meeting people where they are and showing kindness and understanding. People outside of the Catholic Church admire this change, which makes him a global figure in a world that is becoming more divided. One of the most interesting things about Pope Francis's leadership is how much he stresses being humble. From the moment he was chosen, he set the tone for his papacy by turning down many of the advantages that come with the job. He didn't want to live in the fancy apostolic palace, so he picked a simple apartment in the Santa Marta guest house at the Vatican, where he eats in a dining hall with other people and talks to staff and guests every day. This choice, which was both simple and important, showed how much he cared about living with the people he helps. Francis doesn't just see humility as a virtue. He sees it as a way of life that comes from what Christ taught. His dedication to humility also shows in his work for the poor and the disadvantaged, which has been a central part of his presidency. Belief is a strong thing that brings us together. It has nothing to do with religion to be terrorist or extremist. Francis was born into a working-class family in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He saw firsthand how hard it is for poor people to get by. These early events shaped his lifelong commitment to social justice. As Pope, he has always fought for the poor, calling economic inequality a scandal and urging world leaders to make decisions that put people's rights before making money. His works, like the encyclical Evangelio Gaudium, or The Joy of the Gospel, stress that the Church needs to be a poor church for the poor, just like his namesake, St. Francis of Assisi. In addition to talking about material poverty, Pope Francis has also talked about the many ways that people are left out of modern society. He has made it possible for the Church to talk about things that were once frowned upon, showing a more open-minded approach to topics like gay rights, divorce, and talking between faiths. Francis has shown that he is able to act in a way that puts compassion ahead of judgment, while still following Catholic teaching. "Who am I to judge?" was his famous line. When talking about LGBTQ Catholics who are looking for God, he used a very different tone than his predecessors, which struck a chord with people all over the world. The Church has also done a lot to encourage discussion between people of different faiths while Francis has been in charge. At a time when religious tensions are growing, he has worked hard to bring people of different faiths together. Today is the second day of Pope Francis's important trip to Iraq, that he wants to bring together the country's small Christian group. His important meeting with Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani in Iraq and his joint statement on human unity with Sheikh Ahmed el-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, show how much he cares about peace and understanding each other. Because of these efforts, the Catholic Church has become a major force for supporting peace and cooperation around the world. However, Pope Francis's support for growth has not been without fault. More traditional parts of the Church have fought against him because they see his changes as going against custom. There have been heated arguments about his attempts to decentralize church government, give women more leadership roles in the Church, and deal with the clergy SA scandals. Francis is still not giving up because he is sure that the Church needs to change to fit the needs of today's world, while staying true to its spiritual roots. Even though Pope Francis has been an inspiring leader, he is now in his late 80s and is having health problems. This has made people wonder what will happen to the Pope in the future. He has been honest about how hard his duties are on him and about the fact that he might step down if he thinks he can't do his job well anymore. In this way, he follows the lead set by Pope Benedict XVI, whose retirement in 2013 made it possible for Francis to be elected. There are rumors going around behind the scenes that Francis has already started thinking about who will take over as Pope. He wants someone who can carry on his vision of a more global and open church. According to people close to Francis, he really wants the next pope to carry on his work of reforming the church, putting the needs of the poor first, supporting social justice, and encouraging unity within the church. His words and deeds have given the impression that he wants a leader with the same humility and kindness that have characterized his time as pope. As the church looks to the future, the question that still stands is who will carry on the work of Pope Francis. Is Father Louis Tagle really there? The answer could very well set the Catholic Church's path for many years to come. What about how a new pope is picked? How is the pope picked? The choice of a new pope is one of the holiest and most secret events in the world. Rituals and customs that go back hundreds of years make it even more so. This special process called the conclave is a mix of divine guidance, past examples, and human decision-making. Its goal is to make sure that the leader of the Catholic Church is carefully and reverently selected. People all over the world are interested in the election, both because it is important to Catholics and because it is mysterious and intriguing. The process starts when the Holy See, which is the home of the Pope, becomes empty. These things can happen in two ways, as I already said. The current Pope can die, or quit. Most popes have stayed in office until they died, but Pope Benedict XVI's resignation in 2013 showed that even this old job can change to fit modern times. As soon as the seat is empty, the Church goes into a time called seed vacant. This is when preparations for the conclave start. The College of Cardinals, which is in charge of choosing the new pope, is in charge of running the Church at this time. Cardinals are the top leaders of the Church. Most of them are bishops or have important jobs in the Vatican. But only cardinals younger than 80 years old can vote, so not all of them are in the conference. A day full of firsts and exciting events. It was a surprise pick for the 266th pope, but 1.2 billion Catholics are happy about it. At the moment, there are about 120 potential cardinals, showing how the Church reaches people all over the world. These men come from a wide range of national and geographical backgrounds, which shows that Catholicism is open to everyone. The cardinals meet in Rome for the conclave, which takes place in the Sistine Chapel, which is one of the most famous rooms in the Vatican. Before the voting starts, the cardinals swear that they will not talk about or share any details of their conversations or votes. This promise makes the process even more serious and protects the election's integrity. Now, though, things get really interesting. The word conclave comes from the Latin phrase cum clave, which means with a key. This refers to the locked rooms where the election takes place. The way you vote is both easy and important. There are 5 ballots, and each cardinal writes the name of the candidates he supports on one. The ballots are then wrapped up and put into chasse. The votes have been counted and the figures have been added up. If no candidate gets the 2/3 majority needed, the process starts over until everyone agrees on who should win. The ballots are burned in a stove attached to a chimney in St. Peter's Square after each round of voting. The public can see the chimney. Black smoke means that there is no pope, while white smoke means that a new leader has been chosen. In addition to the practicalities of voting, the conclave has a strong spiritual vibe. For Catholics, the election isn't just a political or administrative process. It's also an event that the Holy Spirit guides. The cardinals are told to pray and think about what they should do to help them make the best decision for the Church. The atmosphere in the Sistine Chapel, which is filled with stunning frescoes by Michelangelo that show the Last Judgment and the creation of Adam, the most famous panel on the ceiling shows God creating Adam, serves as a strong reminder of how important their choice was. The guidelines for picking a pope are not made clear, so the cardinals can consider a number of things. They look at the candidate's understanding of theology, experience as a priest, ability to work with others, and hopes for the future of the Church. In recent years, picking a pope in the Sistine Chapel has become more important. This will continue until they find a pope who can deal with modern problems like fewer people going to church, scandals, and the need for more acceptance. When a cardinal gets the required majority, he is asked if he wants to take on the job. He picks a pope name if he agrees. This has been done since Pope John II in the 6th century. The new pope is then given white robes that were specially made for the event and introduced to the world from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, with the words, "I bring you great joy. There is a pope." Not just for the Catholic Church, but for the whole world, choosing a pope is a very important event. Millions of people look to the pope as a spiritual leader, a moral voice on global problems, and a sign of stability in a world that is always changing. The conclave is mysterious because it is secret and full of symbols, but at its core it is a very spiritual process that comes from the beliefs of the Church. That the cardinals are the way the Holy Spirit gives the Church the head it needs at that time in history. The conclave follows customs that are hundreds of years old, but it also shows how the Church is changing. The fact that there are more and more cardinals from Asia, Africa, Latin America, and other places shows that the Church is becoming more global. It shows that future popes may continue to break with the past of the papacy, which has been dominated by Europeans. For example, Pope Francis is the first pope from the Americas. As the Catholic Church looks to the future, the conclave will continue to be a way to honor the past and have hope for the future. This makes sure that the leadership of the Church is chosen with prayer and a feeling of divine purpose. People around the world know that a new era has started, led by a man who carries the weight of history and the hopes of billions of people. When the Catholic Church thinks about the future, the question of who will replace Pope Francis is very important. The Pope is in his late 80s and is having health problems, which has led to more rumors about which cardinal might take over as leader when the time comes. The next pope will not only take on the spiritual duties of the Church, but also the difficult job of figuring out how to adapt the Church's role to a world that is changing quickly. Besides Cardinal Louis Tagle, there aren't many names that keep coming up. Cardinal Pietro Parolin of Italy is a well-known candidate. Pietro is highly regarded for his diplomatic skills and years of experience handling the Church's complicated relationships around the world as Secretary of State for the Vatican. Because he can handle tough situations like making deals with China and dealing with foreign conflicts, he is seen as a steady and practical leader. With a focus on keeping the Church's role as a stabilizing force in world events, Pietro is everything a traditional pope should be. Canada's Cardinal Mark Willett is also a strong possibility. Mark is a theological scholar and the head of the Vatican's Congregation for Bishops. As head of this group, he has a lot of power over the appointment of bishops around the world, which has helped him gain a deep knowledge of the challenges and opportunities facing the Church. Because he is smart and good at running things, he is a great choice for people who want a leader who is rooted in doctrine and can also meet the needs of the Church today. A lot of people also talk about Cardinal Christoph Schoenborn of Austria as a possible pope. Christoph has been an important figure in interfaith dialogue, especially with the Jewish and Muslim groups. He is known for being intellectually rigorous and pastorally sensitive. Religion is a part of everyone, everywhere in the world. Of course, there are people in the world who don't believe in God, and we have to believe what they believe and respect their beliefs. In general, though, every person has a religious feeling, a sense of the divine. His ability to bring people together, keep them apart, and help them understand each other is in line with the Church's purpose to promote peace and reconciliation in a world that is becoming more divided. But no candidate has made people more excited and interested than Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle of the Philippines. Antonio is liked for his charm, kindness, and ability to connect with people from all walks of life. He is sometimes called the Asian Pope Francis. As the leader of Caritas Internationalis, the Church's international aid group, he has shown a strong dedication to fairness and helping the poor. Luis's way of leading is a lot like Pope Francis's. He stresses compassion, acceptance, and a deep knowledge of how the Church works around the world. The Church's goals for the future will definitely be shown in the choice of the next pope. The next time the bishops get together, they will talk about the candidate's religious beliefs in order to figure out the Church's place in the world. What if the choice has already been made, though? The next pope. This is why Luis Tagle will become pope next. As I already said, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle jumps out as a truly transformative figure among the many names being thrown around as possible successors to Pope Francis. Francis, who is affectionately known as the Asian Pope, has led the Church toward a more progressive outlook. His story is just as inspiring as what he could become. Born in Manila, Philippines in 1957, he grew up in a simple home and knew directly the problems that poor people face. His past had a big impact on the things he valued as a priest and then as a cardinal, and deep concern for those who were on the outside. Luis became famous over the years for being able to connect with people from all walks of life. He did this by using his warmth and stories to explain difficult spiritual ideas in a way that everyone could understand. He was made a cardinal by Pope Benedict XVI in 2012 because of his outstanding leadership and spiritual skills. Not only in the Church, but also around the world, Luis has become well known. He has led attempts to fight poverty and climate change as president of Caritas Internationalis, the Church's global humanitarian organization. The beginning of a long-term change in how to deal with climate change. The Catholic Church sides with those who will not give up and help people who have been hurt by wars and natural tragedies. His work shows a strong dedication to social justice, which is in line with Pope Francis's goals and the Church's duty to help those who are less fortunate. But one of the most interesting things about him is that he can bring different societies and points of view together. Luis is a sign of how global Catholicism is in the 21st century, because he is from Asia, where the Catholic Church is growing but not well represented. His election would be a big change from the papacy's past of focusing on Europe. It would show a commitment to welcoming everyone and recognizing the Church's diversity. Luis is fluent in English, Italian, and Tagalog, among other languages, and he can easily connect with people from different cultures and languages. This makes him a great leader for a world that is becoming more and more linked. His way of leading is also similar to the way Pope Francis advocates for spiritual care. People know him for being humble, as he often travels without much attention and helps communities that need it. In his homilies, he talks about kindness, acceptance, and how important it is to listen to people who are on the outside of society, to talk about modern problems and encourage open and caring conversations about things like immigration, relationships between faiths, and economic inequality. Younger Catholics like him because he speaks in a progressive way. They see him as a leader who understands their goals and problems. Some people close to Pope Francis say that he sees him as a natural heir, saying that Francis has said in private, "I made my choice, Louis is my choice." If this support is real, it would mean a lot, because Francis has shown over and over that he wants the Church to put the poor first, be open to change, and work for unity. Also, guess what? There are rumors that Pope Francis visited Asia in September, which could give these rumors a lot of weight. The journey wouldn't be easy. There may be conservatives in the church who don't like his liberal views on social problems or his support for Pope Francis's reforms. It would take a lot of wisdom and strength to deal with these internal disagreements, as well as external problems like falling church attendance in the West and the need for openness in dealing with priest abuse scandals. Still, Luis's past shows that he is the only one who can lead the church through such difficulties with grace and drive. In a lot of ways, he is the best example of what the Catholic Church should try to be: a caring global society based on faith and service. He is a strong candidate for the presidency because he can give people hope, build bridges, and lead with humility. There are rumors that Pope Francis will back Luis, and more people are realizing how talented he is. He is at the top of the list of people who could shape the future of the church. But who would you pick? Share your thoughts below.